The morning sun cut through the mist as Captain Jun Lee chopped wood outside his small cabin. Each swing of the axe was precise, just like everything he did. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air. He had been at it for hours already. This was his life now. Simple, quiet, far from the stars. 10 years had passed since the war. 10 years since Jun had looked up at the night sky without pain in his chest. He was once the most famous human captain in the Galactic Alliance, the hero who saved countless lives during the Voidborn invasion. Now he was just a man in the woods who taught combat skills at a small academy nearby. Most of his students did not know who he really was. They saw only a stern teacher with hard eyes and many scars. They did not see the man who had led the final stand against the alien forces when all seemed lost. They did not know about the squadron he had lost that day. Jun placed another log on the stump and raised the axe. As it came down, his mind flashed back to that final battle. The screams over the comm system, the ships breaking apart, his orders that sent good people to their deaths. The log split with a crack. Still fighting the war, I see. Jun turned quickly, axe ready, old habits. Then he relaxed. It was only Hyun. Dr. Hyun Park stood at the edge of the clearing, looking out of place in his clean clothes. He was Jun's oldest friend and one of the few people who knew where to find him. "I'm just cutting wood," Jun said, placing the axe down. Hyun smiled. "You never just do anything, my friend." Inside the cabin, Jun made tea. The place was small but neat. A desk in the corner held stacks of student papers. One wall had a map of Earth, no star charts, no pictures of space. Jun had left all that behind. "The Academy thinks highly of you," Hyun said, looking around. "They say you're the best tactical teacher they've ever had. They don't know who I am. Would it matter if they did?" Jun did not answer. After the war, the Alliance politicians had needed someone to blame for the high cost of victory. Captain Lee, the hero, had become Captain Lee, the reckless commander who risked too much. It was easier to leave, to disappear, than to fight those battles. "Why are you here, Hyun?" Jun asked, handing his friend a cup of tea. Hyun's face grew serious. "I need to show you something." He placed a small device on the table between them. With a press of a button, it showed a 3D image of space. Tiny red dots moved across it. "Long-range scans from the edge systems," Hyun explained. "Taken 3 days ago." Jun stared at the pattern of movement. His cup froze halfway to his lips. "It looks like the scout formations before the invasion," Hyun finished. "Yes." Jun put his cup down. "The Alliance must know." "They do. They're keeping it quiet to avoid panic. But that's not why I'm here." Hyun leaned forward. "Sue has gone missing." At the mention of that name, Jun's face hardened. Commander Sue Kim was officially listed as his former student and protege. Few knew she was actually his daughter, hidden from the world because of what she was. "What do you mean missing?" Jun's voice was dangerously calm. "She was investigating unusual activity near the outer colonies. Then her reports stopped coming a week ago." Hyun's eyes met Jun's. Her last message mentioned the Voidborn. Jun stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the peaceful woods seemed to mock him. He had sworn never to return to space, never to wear the uniform again. He had built a new life here, away from the politics and the memories. But Sue was out there. "I know what you promised yourself," Hyun said quietly, "but she might need you." Jun closed his eyes. He saw his squadron dying again. He saw the faces of all those he had failed. Then he saw Sue's face. "How soon can you get me a ship?" he asked. Hyun smiled slightly. "I thought you might ask that. There's one waiting at the Old North Field. Unmarked. Fully stocked." Jun nodded once. "I'll need my old gear." Already on board. As Hyun left, Jun looked around the cabin one last time. The simple life he had built was about to end. He was going back to the stars, back to the fight. He had sworn never to return, but some promises had to be broken. The old north field lay hidden between two hills. Tall grass swayed in the night breeze as June approached. The ship waited there, just as Hyun had said. It was small and dark, with no markings or lights, perfect for someone who didn't want to be noticed. Hyun stood beside it, checking something on a small screen. He looked up as June walked closer. "You packed light," Hyun said, eyeing June's single bag. "I don't need much." Inside the ship, Jun ran his hand over the control panel. It had been 10 years, but his fingers remembered where everything was. Flying was like that. The body didn't forget. "I'd loaded all the information we have about Sue's last mission," Hyun said, pointing to a datapad. "It's not much. She was always careful about what she put in official reports." Jun picked up the pad and scrolled through it. "These coordinates. They're near the dead zone." The dead zone was what remained of 3 star systems after the last Voidborn attack. No one went there now. Nothing lived there. "That's what worried me," Hyun said. "She requested permission to check something there, but never said what." June sat in the pilot's seat and began the startup sequence. The ship hummed to life around him. "There's something else you should know," Hyun said, his voice suddenly serious. "Alliance intelligence has been asking questions about someone called Nova." June's hands froze over the controls. Nova was the code name they had given Sue when she was born, when they discovered what made her different. "What kind of questions?" he asked. "They're looking for someone with special abilities, someone who can sense things others can't, someone who might be key to understanding the Voidborn." That was exactly why June had hidden Sue's existence for so long. Her unusual gifts would make her valuable to the military, not as a person, but as a weapon or a tool. How much do they know? Not enough to find her. Yet, Hyun handed June a small device. "This contains everything I could find about their search. And this." He placed a metal box on the console. "This is from me." June opened the box. Inside was an old Alliance captain's badge. His badge, from before. "I don't need this," he said, trying to hand it back. "Keep it," Hyun insisted. "Not for the Alliance. For what it meant to you once." As the ship rose into the night sky, Jun watched the ground fall away below. The cabin where he had hidden for a decade grew smaller until it was lost among the trees. Then clouds covered everything, and he was truly leaving Earth behind. In space, Jun studied Sue's reports more carefully. The official words told one story: routine patrols, standard observations. But between the lines, he could see what others would miss. Sue had found something. Something that frightened her. The last report ended mid-sentence. Energy patterns matched those recorded during the Battle of Orion's Belt. If these readings are correct, then the Voidborn aren't just. And then nothing. June set course for the dead zone, pushing the ship as fast as it would go. As stars streaked past the view screen, he thought about Sue. About the day she was born, when the doctors had been puzzled by the strange readings from her brain. About how her eyes sometimes glowed in the dark. About how she could feel things before they happened. All side effects, they believed, of June's exposure to Voidborn technology during the war. He had kept her safe by staying away, by letting the galaxy believe Captain Lee was a broken man who had run from his failures. It was easier for them to think him a coward than to look too closely at why he had really disappeared. Now Sue was in danger, and June had to find her, even if it meant facing all he had left behind. The ship's computer beeped. An Alliance patrol vessel was ahead, guarding the entrance to the dead zone. June took a deep breath. This was his first test. Would they recognize him after all these years? Would they try to stop him? He opened a communication channel and prepared to lie his way through. The stars waited silently as the patrol ship grew larger in his view screen. Unidentified vessel. This is Alliance Patrol Delta. State your business in restricted space. The journey back had truly begun. Unidentified vessel. Repeat, state your business in restricted space. June leaned toward the comm system. His mind raced. He needed a story that would let him pass. "This is Transport Ship Horizon," he replied, making his voice rough and bored. "Carrying supplies to Outpost Sigma. Check your logs." There was a long pause. June's hands hovered over the controls, ready to run if needed. He knew the patrol ships weren't built for speed. If he had to, he could outrun them. "Transport Horizon, we have no record of supply delivery scheduled for Outpost Sigma." June sighed. "Look, I don't make the orders, I just follow them. Call Outpost Sigma if you want. Ask for Commander Da. He'll clear it up." It was a gamble. Da Yun had been a young officer under June's command during the war. Last June had heard, Da was stationed at Outpost Sigma. If he was still there, and if he remembered June kindly, this might work. Another long silence. "Transport Horizon, you are cleared to proceed to Outpost Sigma. Do not deviate from your course." June released the breath he'd been holding. Understood. Horizon out. He hadn't planned to stop at Outpost Sigma. But now he had no choice. Maybe it was for the best. Da might have information about Sue. The outpost appeared a few hours later, a spinning wheel of metal against the blackness of space. It sat on the edge of the dead zone, the last safe harbor before the emptiness, where 3 star systems had once been. As June docked his ship, memories flooded back. The smell of recycled air, the soft hum of machines, the weight of his body adjusting to artificial gravity. Space felt familiar, like an old home he had tried to forget. A young officer met him at the airlock. "Transport Horizon, we need to inspect your cargo." "Of course," Jum said, following the officer into the station. "I need to speak with Commander Da." The officer looked surprised. "Commander Da doesn't usually meet with transport crews. Tell him it's an old friend from Earth." Jun was led to a waiting area. The station buzzed with activity around him. People in Alliance uniforms hurried past. Screens showed star maps and reports. Everyone seemed tense. After 30 minutes, a door opened. Commander Da Yun stood there, older now, with gray in his hair and new lines on his face. He stared at June for a long moment. "By the stars," he said finally, "it really is you." Da led June to his private office and closed the door. "Captain Lee," he said, shaking his head in wonder, "everyone thinks you're dead, or hiding in shame." "I was hiding," June admitted, "but not in shame." Da offered him a seat. "Why come back now? After all this time?" "I'm looking for Commander Sue Kim. She was on a mission near here." Da's face changed. He looked around, then lowered his voice. "Sue Kim visited the outpost 2 weeks ago. She asked about activity in the dead zone. Strange readings. Then she left. We lost contact with her ship 3 days later." "What aren't you telling me?" June asked, seeing the worry in Da's eyes. Da pressed a button on his desk. The room's windows darkened. "Alliance intelligence came here after she disappeared. They asked about someone called Nova. They said this person might be the key to understanding the Voidborn." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I didn't know anything to tell." Dad leaned forward. "But now you show up, asking about Sue Kim. Is she this Nova they're looking for?" Jum didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Do you have any record of where Sue went after leaving here?" Day studied June's face, then nodded slowly. "She took a small ship toward the center of the dead zone. Said she detected something there. Something alive." "Alive?" "Nothing survived in the dead zone." "That's what I told her. But she insisted." Dad pulled up a map on his desk screen. "I can give you her last known coordinates. But June, you should know, there are rumors. People say the Voidborn are back. That they're looking for something. Or someone." June thought of Sue, with her special abilities. If the Voidborn could somehow sense what she was. "I need to find her," he said simply. Day transferred the coordinates to a data chip and handed it to June. "For what it's worth, I never believed what they said about you after the war." June took the chip. "Thank you." As he turned to leave, Dai added, "Whatever you're mixed up in, be careful. The Alliance isn't what it used to be. There are factions now, people with their own agendas." June nodded. "I'll remember that." Back on his ship, Jun set course for the heart of the dead zone. As the outpost fell away behind him, he felt a strange mix of dread and hope. Sue was out there somewhere, and now so were the Voidborn. The hunt had begun. As Jun's ship moved deeper into the dead zone, he had time to think. His mind drifted back to the past, to the day that changed everything. 27 years ago, during the height of the First Voidborn War, Captain Junbli had led a daring mission. Their target was a Voidborn research ship, where the aliens were testing new weapons. The mission was successful, but during the escape, Jun was caught in a strange energy field. He survived, but the doctors couldn't explain how. Tests showed changes in his body at a cellular level. Changes that weren't harmful, just different. A year later, Sue was born. Jun pulled up an old photo on his datapad. A small baby with bright eyes that sometimes glowed in the dark. Even as an infant, Sue could sense things before they happened. As she grew, her abilities grew stronger. She could feel emotions from across a room. She could see patterns that others missed. The doctors said it was because of Jun's exposure to Voidborn technology. Something had changed in his genetic code and passed to his child. Jun and his wife had kept Sue's abilities secret. They knew what would happen if the Alliance found out. Sue would become a research subject, a tool to be used against the Voidborn. But then Jun's wife died when Sue was just 5 years old. Raising a special child alone, while serving as a captain, became impossible. That's when Hyun had stepped in, offering to become Sue's guardian. For years, this arrangement worked. Jun visited when he could. Sue grew up safe, her abilities hidden from the world. Until the second Voidborn invasion came. During the final battle, when Jun lost his squadron, he made a choice. The Alliance was looking for someone to blame. If he disappeared in disgrace, all attention would be on him, not on his unusual child. So he accepted the blame and walked away from everything. Sue was 15 then, old enough to understand why he had to leave, old enough to be angry about it. Jun sighed, putting away the photo. He hadn't seen Sue in person since that day. They exchanged messages through Hyun, but never met face to face. It was safer that way. 8 years later, Sue had joined the Alliance military under her mother's family name, Kim. Her test scores were off the charts. She rose quickly through the ranks, became a commander at just 23, all while hiding what made her special. An alert from the ship's computer pulled Jun from his thoughts. He was approaching the coordinates Dai had given him. The dead zone lived up to its name. No planets, no stations, just floating debris, the remains of worlds destroyed in the last war. Jun activated the ship's scanners, searching for any sign of Sue's vessel. Nothing appeared on the regular scans. Then he remembered something, a special frequency Sue had used as a child when they played hide and seek. He adjusted the scanner settings and tried again. There, a faint signal, coming from a large chunk of what had once been a moon. Something was there, hiding in the shadow of the dead rock. Jun guided his ship closer. As he neared the signal source, he saw it, a small ship, powered down, drifting silently. It matched the description of the vessel Sue had taken from Outpost Sigma. With careful maneuvering, Jun brought his ship alongside Sue's. He docked with a soft clank of metal on metal. The airlock indicators showed good pressure on the other side. At least the ship wasn't damaged. Heart pounding, Jun opened the airlock and stepped through. "Sue," he called, his voice echoing in the empty corridor. No answer. The ship was cold. Emergency lights cast a dim blue glow. Jun moved forward, checking each room. The cockpit was empty. So was the small sleeping area. Then, in the ship's tiny research lab, he found something. A datapad, left open on a table. On it were star charts, energy readings, and a message. "If you're reading this, you've figured out where I went. I found something big. The Voidborn aren't what we thought. They're looking for me, for Nova, but not for the reasons the Alliance thinks. I can't explain everything here. It's not safe. Find the second signal. You'll understand then. S. June checked the star charts on the pad. A location was marked, even deeper in the dead zone. As he studied the map, a new alert sounded from his ship. Another vessel was approaching. Fast. June rushed back to the airlock. Through the small window, he could see his ship's console flashing warning lights. Someone had found him, and they were not friendly. June raced back to his ship. He had only minutes before the approaching vessel reached him. Through the airlock window, he could see his ship's controls flashing red. The scanner showed a medium-sized craft, heavily armed. Not Alliance design. He had two choices, run or hide. Running meant leaving Sue's ship and the clues it might contain. Hiding meant hoping the other ship would pass by without detecting him. June chose to hide. He shut down all systems except life support and emergency power. His ship went dark, pressed against Sue's vessel. Together, they drifted in the shadow of the dead moon. The unknown ship slowed as it approached. It moved like a predator, scanning the area carefully. Its lights swept over the debris field. June held his breath as the beam passed over his ship. Then, without warning, a tractor beam locked onto both ships. Clever, a voice said over the comm system, but not clever enough. June knew he couldn't fight or escape the tractor beam. He grabbed Sue's data pad and a weapon from his storage locker. Then he waited, aiming at the airlock. The ships connected with a dull thud. The airlock hissed open. A woman stepped through. She wore a plain black uniform with no markings. Her dark hair was cut short. She held a standard Alliance blaster, but her stance showed advanced combat training. "Captain June Lee," she said, not seeming surprised by the weapon pointed at her. "I've been looking for you." "Who are you?" Jum demanded, not lowering his gun. "Jai-Han, Alliance Special Operations." She showed him an ID. "I'm here for the same reason you are. I'm looking for Nova." Jum kept his face blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." Jai smiled slightly. "Let's not waste time. I know who Sue Kim really is. I know she's your daughter. And I know about her special abilities. If you know all that, then you know I won't let you take her. I'm not here to take her." Ji holstered her weapon slowly. "I'm here to find her before others do. The Alliance has been compromised. There are people in high positions working against us." Jum didn't lower his gun. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I'm the one who helped Sue start her investigation, and because I can take you to the second signal." That got June's attention. He nodded toward Sue's datapad. "You know about this?" "Yes. Sue left clues for someone who would come looking for her. She knew it would be you." June studied Ji carefully. Her eyes were steady, her posture relaxed despite the weapon aimed at her. Either she was telling the truth, or she was very good at lying. "What's at the second signal?" he asked. "I don't know exactly. Sue found evidence that the Voidborn are back, but not as invaders this time. They're searching for something, or someone." "Nova," Jones said quietly. Jay nodded. She believed they could sense her somehow, that they were drawn to her unique energy signature. June finally lowered his weapon. "If what you're saying is true, why does the Alliance want to find her?" "Different factions want different things. Some want to use her as a weapon against the Voidborn. Others want to study her. My group just wants to understand what's happening." "And what is happening?" Ji's face grew serious. "Something bigger than the last war. Something that made even the Voidborn afraid." She moved to a console and entered coordinates. A star map appeared, showing a location deep in the dead zone. "This is where the second signal is coming from. An old research station that was thought destroyed. Sue found it still intact, hidden inside an asteroid field." June looked at the coordinates, then at Jai. "You could have gone there yourself. Why wait for me?" "Because Sue left traps. The station security system will only respond to 2 genetic signatures. hers and yours. It made sense. Sue would have known someone might track her. She would have made sure only her father could follow safely. So you need me to get in, Jun said. And you need my ship. Yours doesn't have the shielding to enter that asteroid field. Jun didn't like it, but he had no choice. He needed to find Sue, and G seemed to be his best option. If you betray me, he warned, you'll regret it. Jay nodded seriously. I know your record, Captain. I know what you're capable of. But right now, we need each other. She extended her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Jun shook it. The hunt for Sue, for Nova, continued. G's ship moved smoothly through space. It was faster than Jun's, with better shields and weapons. Jun sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching the stars blur past. He didn't trust G yet, but he had no choice but to work with her. How did you meet Sue? He asked, breaking the silence. G kept her eyes on the controls. 3 years ago, she was assigned to my unit for a mission. I noticed she could sense things, know things before they happened. And you reported her. Jun's voice was cold. No, Chi glanced at him. I recognized what she was because I've seen it before. Other people changed by Voidborn technology. This surprised Jun. There are others like Sue. Not exactly like her, but similar. The Voidborn left their mark on many humans during the war. Most changes were small. Sue's were special. The ship's computer beeped. They were approaching the asteroid field. Through the view screen, Jun could see thousands of rocks spinning slowly in the darkness. The research station is hidden in there, G said. Sue found it by following energy readings that matched Voidborn technology. G guided the ship carefully between the asteroids. The field was dense, with rocks ranging from car size to as big as small moons. Normal sensors wouldn't work well here. Too much interference. There, Jun said, pointing. That large asteroid. It's not spinning like the others. Jai nodded and adjusted their course. As they got closer, Jun could see that the asteroid wasn't a rock at all. It was a station, covered in dark material to look like the surrounding debris. Clever, G murmured. Hidden in plain sight. They circled the station, looking for a way in. It appeared abandoned, with no lights or signs of life. Then Jun spotted a small docking bay, its doors slightly open. There. We can get in there. G maneuvered the ship into the narrow opening. The docking bay was dark, lit only by their ship's lights. As they touched down, emergency lights flickered to life along the floor. The station recognized our approach, G said. It's still active. They suited up before leaving the ship. The station might have air, but they couldn't be sure. Jun checked his weapon and noticed G doing the same. The airlock showed green when they approached. The station had atmosphere. They stepped through, removing their helmets once inside. Sue was definitely here, Jun said, looking at footprints in the dust on the floor. They followed the prints down a long corridor. The station was cold, running on minimal power. Their breath made small clouds in the air. In what once was the main control room, they found signs of recent activity. Computers had been turned on. Data files accessed. Look at this, G said, pointing to a screen that was still active. It showed star maps and strange symbols Jun didn't recognize. Voidborn language, he said. Sue was studying it. Not just studying it, Jai replied, tapping the screen. She was communicating with them. Before Jun could respond, a loud alarm blared. Red lights flashed along the walls. Proximity alert, G said, rushing to another screen. Something's approaching the station. They watched as a ship appeared on the monitor. Its design was unlike anything Jun had ever seen. Not human, not Alliance. Voidborn, he whispered. The alien ship moved closer to the station. It was smooth and dark, with no visible weapons or thrusters, yet it moved with purpose. We need to leave, G said urgently. Now. They ran back toward the docking bay. Halfway there, the station shook violently. The lights flickered and died. They're docking, June shouted. They'll be inside soon. This way, Jay said, pulling him down a side corridor. There might be another way out. As they ran, the station shook again. Metal groaned around them. A section of wall ahead collapsed, blocking their path. Back, June yelled, turning around. Too late. The corridor behind them was already filled with a strange, glowing mist. It moved toward them like it was alive, cutting off their escape. What is that? Ji asked, raising her weapon. Voidborn scanning technology, Jun said. Don't shoot. It might react. The mist surrounded them, growing brighter. Jun felt a strange tingling on his skin. In his mind, he heard a voice, not in words, but in feelings, images. Asterisk, the child of the Changed One. Father of Nova Asterisk. The mist pulsed once, then withdrew, leaving them alone in the dark corridor. What just happened? Ji asked, her voice shaking slightly. June stared at the space where the mist had been. I think they recognized me. The mist withdrew, but June and Ji remained trapped between the collapsed corridor and the area where the Voidborn had entered. They needed another way out. There, Jay pointed to a small maintenance hatch in the floor. That might lead to the lower levels. They pried open the hatch and climbed down into a narrow service tunnel. The air was stale but breathable. They crawled through the darkness, guided only by the light on Ji's wrist device. The Voidborn recognized you, Jay whispered as they moved. They called you Father of Nova. They were in my head somehow, Jun said. It wasn't words exactly. More like feelings, images. What do they want with Sue? I don't know, but they didn't attack us. That means something. The tunnel ended at another hatch. June pushed it open, and they climbed into what looked like a storage room. Crates lined the walls, marked with old Alliance symbols. Where are we? Ji asked. June checked a panel near the door. Lower level, east section. The emergency shuttles should be nearby. They moved cautiously through empty corridors. The station felt different here, older, abandoned long before Sue arrived. Dust covered everything except for a single set of footprints on the floor. Sue was here too, Jun said, following the prints. The trail led them to a large circular room. Unlike the rest of the station, this room was clean and lit. In the center stood a strange device, a column of light that reached from floor to ceiling, pulsing with energy. And beside it stood Sue. June stopped in the doorway, his heart pounding. His daughter had grown into a strong woman. Her dark hair was cut short like her mother's had been. She wore a simple Alliance uniform with no rank insignia. When she turned toward them, her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Father, she said, you came. June stepped forward. Sue. For a moment, they just looked at each other, years of separation hanging between them. Then Sue moved first, closing the distance and embracing him tightly. I'm sorry, June whispered, for leaving, for staying away. You did what you had to do, Sue replied. She stepped back and looked at Jai. You brought her. Jay nodded respectfully. Commander Kim. You can call me Sue now. Ranks don't matter anymore. Sue turned back to the column of light. Not after what I've learned. What is this place? June asked. What's happening? Sue touched the column of light. It rippled like water under her fingers. This is a communication device. The Voidborn built it long ago, left it here for someone like me to find. Someone like you? Ji asked. Someone changed. Someone who could understand them. Sue looked at her father. Your exposure to their technology didn't just change you, it connected you to them. And through you, it connected me even more strongly. Connected how? June asked. The Voidborn aren't what we thought they were, Sue explained. They aren't invaders. They're refugees. Ji frowned. Refugees from what? Something worse. Something that destroyed their home systems before they came to ours. Sue's eyes glowed brighter. They call it the Devourer. a living darkness that consumes entire worlds. Jun remembered the dead zone. 3 star systems wiped out. The last war was just the beginning. Su finished. The Voidborn were trying to warn us, but we couldn't understand. We thought they were attacking. And now? G asked. Now the Devourer has found our galaxy. Su's voice was grim. The Voidborn returned to find me, to find Nova, because they believe I can help them communicate with humans. Build an alliance against what's coming. Alliance intelligence knows something is happening, G said. Different factions are fighting for control. Some want to use you as a weapon. Others want to hide the truth. We don't have time for human politics, Su said. The Devourer will be here soon. Days, maybe hours. Jun looked at his daughter, pride and fear mixing in his chest. What do you need us to do? I need to go public. No more hiding. Su touched the light column again. I need to show the Alliance leaders what I've seen, make them understand the real threat. They'll try to control you, Jun warned. Let them try. Su smiled, and for a moment, she looked exactly like her mother. I'm not a scared child anymore. The station shook suddenly. Alarms blared again. What's happening? G asked. Su rushed to a console. The Voidborn ship is leaving. Something's coming. Something big. On the screen, a massive shadow appeared at the edge of the asteroid field. It moved like a living thing, darker than the space around it. The Devourer, Su whispered. It's here. The station shook again as the shadow moved closer. Parts of the ceiling began to fall around them. We need to leave now, G said, checking her weapon. This station won't survive if that thing attacks. Jun looked at his daughter. Su, come with us. Su shook her head. Not yet. I need to save the data first. Her fingers moved quickly over the console. Everything I've learned about the Devourer is here. The Alliance will need it. Another violent shake threw them all off balance. The lights flickered. No time, Jai insisted. We have to go. Give me 1 minute, Su said, connecting a small device to the console. Just 1 minute to download what I can. Jun stood guard at the door while Su worked and G checked the path to the emergency shuttles. The station groaned around them, metal twisting as if in pain. Done, Su said finally, pocketing the small device. Let's go. They ran through the collapsing station, following G's lead. Twice they had to find new routes when corridors buckled ahead of them. The emergency lights turned red, warning of critical system failures. There. G pointed to a door marked with the shuttle symbol. The bay should be just through here. The door was jammed. Jun and G forced it open, while Su watched the shadows closing in behind them. Inside, a single small shuttle waited. It's old, G said, checking the controls. But it should work. They strapped in as G started the launch sequence. The shuttle bay doors opened slowly, revealing the asteroid field. And beyond it, the massive shadow of the Devourer. It was like looking at a hole in space. No light escaped it. No stars shone through it. It moved with purpose, tendrils of darkness reaching out like hungry fingers. It's scanning the station, Su said, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. Looking for me. The shuttle's engines fired. They shot out of the bay just as a section of the station collapsed behind them. She navigated through the asteroid field, using the larger rocks for cover. My ship is still docked on the other side, she said. If we can reach it. We can't, Su interrupted. Look. The Devourer had wrapped itself around the station. The structure was breaking apart, being absorbed into the darkness. G's ship along with it. New plan, G said grimly. This shuttle has a small jump drive. 1 jump only. Not far. Where to? Jun and Su looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them. Alliance headquarters, Su said. Central Command. Jai raised an eyebrow. You want to go straight to the heart of the Alliance. After everything you just told us about factions wanting to use you. We don't have a choice, Su replied. The Devourer is here now. We need the Alliance fleet, and we need the Voidborn. Together. June nodded slowly. She's right. We can't fight this alone. It's suicide, G warned. The moment you reveal yourself as Nova, you'll be taken into custody. Maybe, Sue said, or maybe I'll finally get people to listen. Jai sighed and set the coordinates. Your call, Commander. As the shuttle prepared to jump, Jun turned to his daughter. For so long, he had tried to protect her by keeping her hidden, by staying away. Now she was choosing to step into the light. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Sue looked at the darkness pursuing them. No, but I'm sure about what happens if we do nothing. Once we do this, there's no going back to hiding, he warned. I'm tired of hiding, Sue said, her voice firm. I've been hiding my whole life. For what? So I could be safe while others died. That's not why you raised me. June felt a swell of pride. No, it's not. Remember what Mom used to say? Sue asked, a sad smile on her face. Sometimes the most courageous thing isn't fighting. It's standing up to be seen. The shuttle's engine whined as the jump drive charged. Outside, the Devourer seemed to sense their escape. It changed direction, moving toward them with frightening speed. Jump in 3, 2, 1. G counted down. The stars blurred. The Devourer's reaching darkness just missed them as the shuttle jumped away. For better or worse, they were headed to Alliance headquarters. Sue would no longer be hidden, and Jun would no longer run from his past. The future of humanity now depended on whether the Alliance would listen to what Sue had to tell them. The shuttle emerged from its jump near Alliance headquarters, a massive ring-shaped station orbiting Earth. Dozens of warships surrounded it, a show of power and protection for the heart of human government. They've spotted us, G said as warning lights flashed on her console, and they're not happy about an unscheduled arrival. Attention unknown shuttle, a stern voice came over the comm. You have entered restricted space. Power down and prepare to be boarded. June leaned toward the comm. This is Captain Jun Lee. We have urgent information about a threat to Earth. Request immediate meeting with Central Command. A long silence followed. Did you say Captain Jun Lee? The voice finally asked. Yes, and I'm with Commander Soo Kim and Agent Jihan. We need to speak with Central Command now. Earth is in danger. More silence. June could imagine the confusion his name was causing. A disgraced captain, long thought dead, suddenly appearing at headquarters. Shuttle SK-17, you are cleared to dock at Bay 12. Security teams will meet you there. Understood, Jun replied. As they approached the docking bay, Sue looked at her father and Jay. Whatever happens next, thank you. Both of you. They won't make it easy, Jay warned. The Alliance doesn't like surprises. Then we'll have to be very convincing, Sue said, her eyes glowing slightly. Armed guards met them as they stepped out of the shuttle. The soldiers seemed unsure whether to treat them as prisoners or guests. A tall man in an admiral's uniform pushed through the group. Lee, is it really you? The admiral stared at June with wide eyes. June nodded. Admiral Kang. It's been a long time. Admiral Kang had been a junior officer during the war. Now he commanded the Alliance Defense Forces. 10 years, Kang said. 10 years we thought you were hiding in shame or dead. And now you appear with... His eyes moved to Sue, narrowing slightly. This must be the famous Commander Kim. Sir, Sue saluted. We have critical information. Earth is in imminent danger. Kang looked skeptical. Follow me. They were led to a secure meeting room where 5 other high-ranking officers waited. Security cameras watched from every corner. Guards stood at the doors. You have 10 minutes, Kang said. Convince us. Sue stepped forward. The Voidborn have returned, but not as enemies. They're refugees fleeing from something worse, an entity they call the Devourer. It destroyed their home systems before they came to ours. Why should we believe this? A woman in a general's uniform asked. Because I've seen it, Sue replied. And because it's already here, she placed her small device on the table. It projected images of the shadow they had escaped. This was recorded hours ago at a research station in the dead zone. The room fell silent as they watched the darkness consume the station. "What is that thing?" Kang asked, his voice quieter now. "A living darkness that feeds on energy, all energy, including life." Sue took a deep breath. "And I can help you fight it." "How?" the general demanded. Instead of answering, Sue closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they glowed brightly. The lights in the room flickered. "My name is Nova," she said, her voice somehow different. "I am human, but I can communicate with the Voidborn. I can help you understand them." The officers moved back, some reaching for weapons. "What is this?" Kang shouted. "The truth," Jun said, stepping beside his daughter. "My exposure to Voidborn technology during the First War changed my DNA. Those changes passed to my daughter, giving her unique abilities. She's been hiding all this time," Jay added, "protected by those who knew what would happen if certain factions found her." Sue raised her hands. "I'm not your enemy. Neither are the Voidborn. We all face the same threat now." As if on cue, alarms sounded throughout the station. "Admiral." An officer burst into the room. "Long-range sensors have detected something massive approaching Earth. And, sir, Voidborn ships have appeared near Jupiter. A lot of them." All eyes turned to Sue. "They're here for the same reason we are," she said. "To warn you, to help fight. But they need someone who can translate, who can bridge the gap between our species. They need me," she continued. "And we need them if humanity is to survive." Kang stared at Sue for a long moment, then at the images of the Devourers still playing on the table. "What do you propose?" he finally asked. Sue smiled slightly. "A meeting between human leaders and Voidborn representatives, with me as the bridge. And if we refuse, then we all die separately," Jun said simply, "instead of having a chance together." Kang took a deep breath, then nodded once. "Make the arrangements." Sue reached for her father's hand and squeezed it. After a lifetime of hiding, she would finally stand in the light. Humanity would face the darkness united, not just with each other, but with former enemies as well. And Jun, who had sworn never to return, stood proudly beside his daughter as she prepared to save them all.